Natalie Foster stood before the towering mirrors in the bridal suite of Sterling Manor, her hands trembling as she adjusted the delicate lace veil cascading down her shoulders. The ivory gown hugged her figure perfectly, its intricate beading, catching the afternoon sunlight streaming through the tall windows. She had dreamed of this moment since childhood, but something felt wrong. The butterflies in her stomach were not from excitement, but from a gnawing sense of dread she could not quite name. Her best friend Lauren rushed into the room, holding a bouquet of white roses and peonies. "Natalie, you look absolutely stunning. Christopher is going to lose his mind when he sees you walking down that aisle." Natalie forced a smile, touching the diamond necklace Christopher had given her the night before. It was beautiful, cold and heavy against her skin, much like the man himself had become in recent months. She pushed the thought away. Today was supposed to be perfect. Today everything would change for the better. The ceremony begins. The grand ballroom of Sterling Manor had been transformed into a fairy tale setting. Crystal chandeliers hung from the vaulted ceiling, casting prismatic light across hundreds of white roses and flickering candles. Over 300 guests filled the gilded chairs, all dressed in their finest attire. These were the elite of society, business moguls, socialites, and influential figures who moved in Christopher Sterling's world. Natalie recognized only a handful of faces, her own small family looking uncomfortable and out of place among the opulence. The string quartet began playing, and Natalie's father appeared at her side. His eyes were misty as he squeezed her hand. "You sure about this, sweetheart? You know you can still change your mind." His words struck something deep inside her, but she shook her head. "I love him, Dad. I'm sure." Even as she said it, doubt whispered in the back of her mind. The doors opened, and Natalie began her walk down the flower-strewn aisle. Every eye turned to watch her, and she focused on keeping her breathing steady. At the altar stood Christopher Sterling, tall and imposing in his custom-tailored tuxedo. His dark hair was slicked back perfectly, his jaw set in a hard line. He was undeniably handsome, the kind of man who commanded attention wherever he went. But as Natalie approached, she noticed something that made her blood run cold. He was not smiling. His eyes were not filled with love or joy. Instead, he looked at her with something closer to resignation. The unthinkable happens. Natalie reached the altar, her father placing her hand in Christopher's. His palm was cool and stiff, offering no reassurance. The minister began the ceremony, his voice echoing through the cavernous space. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness the union of Christopher James Sterling and Natalie Marie Foster in holy matrimony." Natalie tried to catch Christopher's eye, seeking the warmth she had fallen in love with 2 years ago, but he stared straight ahead, his expression unreadable. When the minister asked if anyone had objections to the marriage, the room fell into the expected silence. But then Christopher cleared his throat. "I do." The words hung in the air like a bomb about to explode. Confused murmurs rippled through the crowd. Natalie felt the world tilt beneath her feet. "Christopher, what are you saying?" Her voice came out as a broken whisper. Christopher finally looked at her, and what she saw in his eyes shattered her completely. There was no love, no regret, only cold calculation. "I cannot marry you, Natalie. This was a mistake. I thought I could go through with it. But I cannot commit my life to someone who does not belong in my world. You are a sweet girl, but you are not what the Sterling family needs. Not what I need. Public humiliation." The ballroom erupted in shocked gasps and frantic whispers. Natalie stood frozen, unable to process what was happening. Her dream wedding had become her worst nightmare, broadcast to hundreds of witnesses. "Christopher, please," she managed to choke out, tears streaming down her face. "We can talk about this. We can work through whatever you are feeling." He stepped back, creating physical distance between them. There is nothing to work through. I should have ended this months ago, but I kept hoping my feelings would change. They have not. You deserve someone who can love you the way you need to be loved. I am not that man. His words were delivered with such finality, such coldness, that Natalie felt her legs buckle. Her father caught her, steadying her as the room spun. Christopher's mother, Victoria Sterling, glided forward with practiced grace, her face a mask of polite concern. Let us give them some privacy. Guests, please make your way to the reception. Hall! The staff will ensure you are comfortable while we sort this out. Her tone made it clear this was not a request. The crowd began to move, their excited chatter filling the air. Natalie caught fragments of their conversations. Can you believe this? Poor girl, so humiliated. I always knew she was not suitable for the Sterling family. Never trusted that match from the start. The breaking point, Natalie stood at the altar, still in her wedding gown, watching the man she loved walk away without a backward glance. Lauren rushed to her side, wrapping protective arms around her shaking shoulders. We are leaving right now. You do not have to stay here another second. But Natalie could not move. Her mind replayed every moment of their relationship, searching for signs she had missed. Had he ever truly loved her? Or had she been nothing more than a temporary distraction for a man who always knew she would never be enough? Victoria Sterling approached with measured steps, her expression one of practiced sympathy that did not reach her eyes. Miss Foster, I am truly sorry it came to this. Perhaps it is for the best. Christopher needs someone who understands the demands of his position, someone bred for this life. You are a lovely girl, but you must see that you were never truly suited for what being a Sterling requires. The words, delivered with such casual cruelty, were the final blow. Natalie gathered what remained of her dignity and lifted her chin. Tell Christopher he can keep the ring, the gifts, everything. I want nothing from him or this family. Her voice was steadier than she felt. She turned to her father and Lauren. Please take me home. As they escorted her through the side exit, away from the prying eyes and whispered judgments, Natalie made herself a promise. She would never again allow anyone to make her feel small, unworthy, or less than enough. Whatever came next, she would face it on her own terms. The sound of the closing door echoed through the empty ceremony space, marking the end of one chapter and the painful beginning of another. Natalie Foster had entered Sterling Manor as a hopeful bride. She left as a woman determined to discover who she truly was beyond the shadow of a man who never deserved her heart. 6 months had passed since that devastating day at Sterling Manor. Natalie Foster sat on a weathered bench overlooking the ocean in the small coastal town of Harborview, watching the waves crash against the rocky shore. The salty breeze tangled her hair, now cut shorter and lighter than it had been during her engagement. She breathed deeply, letting the sea air fill her lungs. This place, hundreds of miles from the city where Christopher Sterling controlled. His empire had become her sanctuary and her salvation. After the wedding disaster, Natalie had spent 2 weeks in her childhood bedroom, unable to face the world. The story had spread like wildfire through social media and gossip columns. Heiress jilted at altar by billionaire Groom. The humiliation had been crushing, but eventually, anger replaced despair. She refused to let Christopher's rejection define the rest of her life. With the small inheritance from her late grandmother, Natalie had bought a one-way ticket to Harborview, a town she had visited once as a child and remembered as peaceful and kind. Meeting Patricia Green her first week in Harborview, Natalie had wandered into a cozy cafe called The Lighthouse, drawn by the smell of fresh bread and coffee. Behind the counter stood a woman in her 60s, with silver hair pulled into a loose bun and eyes that crinkled with genuine warmth. "Welcome, dear. You look like you could use something comforting." How about my special cinnamon roll and a hot chocolate? The woman's kindness, offered without expectation or judgment, had brought tears to Natalie's eyes. That woman was Patricia Green, owner of the lighthouse and unofficial heart of Harborview. Over the following weeks, Patricia became more than just a friendly cafe owner. She became a confidant, a mentor, and the maternal figure Natalie desperately needed. Patricia never pushed for Natalie's story, but when it finally poured out one rainy afternoon, she had simply held Natalie's hand and said something that changed everything. That man did not reject you because you were not enough. He rejected you because he was not brave enough to accept the gift of real love. His loss, not yours. Patricia offered Natalie a job at the cafe, and though Natalie had never waitressed before, she accepted gratefully. The work was simple but satisfying. She learned to make perfect cappuccinos, memorized regular customers' orders, and discovered joy in the small connections that came from serving people with genuine care. For the first time in years, Natalie felt useful in a way that had nothing to do with being someone's partner or fitting into someone else's vision of who she should be. Finding purpose at the community center, 3 months into her Harborview life, Patricia mentioned that the local community center was looking for someone to coordinate their youth programs. The pay is not much, but I think you would be wonderful at it. You have a gentle way with people, Natalie. These kids need someone who truly sees them. Natalie had never considered working with children, but something about the opportunity called to her. The Harborview Community Center was a modest building near the harbor, its paint peeling but its spirit vibrant. The director, Thomas Wu, was an energetic man in his 50s who believed every child deserved opportunities regardless of their family's financial situation. We serve about 40 kids regularly, he explained during Natalie's interview. Many come from families struggling to make ends meet. We provide after-school programs, art classes, sports activities, whatever keeps them engaged and hopeful. Can you help us expand what we offer? Natalie threw herself into the work with surprising passion. She organized art workshops, started a reading club, and discovered she had a natural ability to connect with the teenagers who came through the center's doors. These young people, many dealing with their own struggles and disappointments, responded to her authenticity. She never pretended to have all the answers, never talked down to them. Instead, she shared her own story of heartbreak and rebuilding, showing them that setbacks could become starting points for something better. One girl in particular, 15-year-old Jasmine Rodriguez, attached herself to Natalie. Jasmine was bright and talented, but carried anger from a difficult home situation. "You really got dumped at your wedding in front of everyone?" Jasmine asked one day with typical teenage bluntness. "That is brutal." Natalie had laughed, the first time she could find humor in her story. "It was definitely not my best day. But you know what I learned? Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you is actually the universe pushing you towards something better." Jasmine had nodded slowly, something shifting in her expression. Maybe I can believe that. The mysterious Benjamin Hayes was a Thursday afternoon in early autumn when Benjamin Hayes first walked into the Lighthouse Cafe. Natalie was wiping down tables after the lunch rush when the bell above the door chimed. She glanced up and found herself looking at a man who seemed slightly out of place in the casual beach town. He wore jeans and a simple navy sweater, but something about the way he carried himself suggested he was accustomed to more formal settings. He had sandy brown hair with threads of gray at the temples, warm hazel eyes, and a face that was handsome in an understated way. When he smiled at her, it reached his eyes completely, crinkling the corners in a way that suggested he smiled often and meant it. "I hear this is the best cafe within 100 miles. That is quite a reputation to live up to." His voice was rich and friendly with a hint of amusement. Natalie found herself smiling back without the usual guardedness she had developed. "Well, we certainly try our best. What can I get for you?" Benjamin became a regular fixture at the lighthouse over the following weeks. He would arrive mid-afternoon with his laptop, order black coffee and whatever pastry Patricia recommended, and work quietly in the corner booth. He was polite to everyone, left generous tips, and had a remarkable ability to remember details about people's lives. He asked Thomas Wu about his daughter's college applications, inquired about Patricia's new recipes, and always greeted Natalie with genuine warmth that never felt intrusive or inappropriate. Natalie found herself looking forward to his visits, though she could not quite explain why. There was something calming about his presence, something safe. Unlike Christopher, who had always seemed to be performing for an invisible audience, Benjamin appeared comfortable in his own skin. He laughed easily, listened more than he talked, and treated the cafe staff with the same respect he showed everyone else. Growing connection. One rainy afternoon, the lighthouse was nearly empty except for Benjamin at his usual booth. Natalie brought him a fresh coffee and found herself lingering. "You are here almost every day, but I realize I do not know much about you. What brings you to Harborview?" Benjamin looked up from his laptop, considering her question. "I am an architect. I am working on a project for the harbor development, but honestly, I am also here because I needed a change of pace. Sometimes you have to step away from the noise to remember what matters." Something in his words resonated with Natalie. "I know exactly what you mean. I came here 6 months ago for similar reasons. Needed to figure out who I was, away from other people's expectations." Benjamin's expression softened with understanding. "And have you figured it out?" She thought about the question honestly. "I am getting there. I am learning that I am stronger than I thought, and that happiness does not have to look the way I always imagined it would." Their conversations became longer and deeper. Benjamin shared that he had been married young, divorced 5 years ago, and had spent the time since focusing on his work and his relationship with his teenage daughter, Olivia. "I was not a great husband," he admitted one evening. "I was too focused on building my career, on proving something to myself and the world. By the time I realized what I was sacrificing, it was too late. But I learned from it. Now I try to prioritize what actually matters." Natalie appreciated his honesty, his willingness to acknowledge his mistakes without making excuses. She found herself sharing more of her own story, the parts she had kept hidden even from Patricia. How Christopher had gradually made her feel like she needed to change everything about herself to be worthy of his world. How she had lost pieces of her identity trying to become what he wanted. How the public rejection, though devastating, had also been a strange kind of liberation. The turning point, 2 months after Benjamin's arrival in Harborview, he invited Natalie to dinner. "Nothing fancy, just that seafood place by the pier if you are interested. No pressure." Natalie's first instinct was to decline, to protect the fragile peace she had built. But something stopped her. Benjamin had become a friend, someone whose company she genuinely enjoyed. Maybe it was time to stop hiding from possibilities just because she had been hurt before. The dinner was easy and comfortable, filled with laughter and conversation that flowed naturally. They talked about everything from architecture to favorite books to their shared love of the ocean. As the evening ended and they walked along the moonlit beach, Benjamin stopped and turned to her. "Natalie, I want you to know I value your friendship tremendously. I am not looking to rush anything or push for more than you are ready to give. But I also want to be honest. I find myself thinking about you far more than is probably appropriate for a casual friendship." Natalie's heart hammered in her chest. 6 months ago, she would have run from such a declaration. But standing there with Benjamin, seeing the vulnerability and respect in his eyes, she felt something she had not experienced in a long time. Hope. "I think about you too," she admitted softly. "But I am scared, Benjamin. I am scared of making the same mistakes, of trusting the wrong person again." He reached for her hand gently, giving her every opportunity to pull away. She did not. "Then we will go slowly. We will build something real, something honest. No games, no pretending to be anything we are not. Just 2 people who enjoy each other's company. Seeing where that leads. Does that sound acceptable?" Natalie nodded, tears pricking her eyes. But these were different tears. Not tears of pain or humiliation, but of gratitude and possibility. "That sounds perfect." As they stood together on the beach, the waves whispering against the shore, Natalie realized something profound. She had come to Harborview broken and lost, but she had rebuilt herself into someone stronger and more authentic. And now, perhaps, she was ready to let someone see and appreciate the woman she had become. Whatever happened next, she knew she would face it as herself, completely and unapologetically. That alone felt like victory. 3 months into their relationship, Natalie and Benjamin had settled into a comfortable rhythm that felt both exciting and natural. They spent evenings walking along the beach, weekends exploring nearby towns, and quiet mornings at the lighthouse sharing coffee before the day began. Benjamin had met Jasmine and the other kids at the community center, and they adored him. He helped with building projects, taught basic design principles, and listened to their dreams with genuine interest. Natalie watched him interact with the teenagers and felt her heart expanding in ways she had thought impossible after Christopher. One Saturday morning, Benjamin arrived at her small apartment looking unusually nervous. His hands were shoved deep in his pockets, and he kept shifting his weight from foot to foot. "Natalie, there is something I need to tell you. Something I should have mentioned earlier, but I was afraid it might change how you see me." Her stomach tightened with familiar anxiety, but she forced herself to remain calm. "Okay, whatever it is, just tell me." Benjamin took a deep breath. "My full name is Benjamin Hayes. I own Hayes Architecture Group. We design luxury hotels and resorts internationally. The harbor development project I mentioned is actually something much bigger. I am planning to build a boutique resort here in Harborview, something that will bring jobs and tourism while preserving the town's character. I have been keeping a low profile because I wanted to understand the community first, to make sure whatever I build serves the people who live here, not just wealthy tourists." Natalie processed this information slowly. "So you are wealthy, very wealthy from what it sounds like." Benjamin nodded, looking miserable. "I know how that must sound after what you went through with Christopher. I should have told you sooner, but I was enjoying being just Benjamin, the guy who drinks too much coffee and works in the corner booth. I did not want you to see me differently. I did not want money to become part of what we were building together." She sat down on her couch, thinking carefully. Benjamin sat beside her, maintaining a respectful distance. "I appreciate you telling me," she said finally, "and I understand why you hesitated. But here is the thing. Christopher never hid his wealth. What he hid was his character, his values, his true feelings about me. You have shown me who you are through your actions every single day. The money does not change that. What matters is that you have been honest with me now, and that you care about this community and the people in it." Benjamin's relief was visible. "So we are okay?" "We are more than okay." Natalie reached for his hand. "But I want you to promise me something. No more secrets. If we are going to do this, we do it with complete honesty, even when the truth is uncomfortable." He squeezed her hand gently. "I promise. Complete honesty from now on." Christopher's return. 2 weeks later, Natalie was organizing art supplies at the community center when Thomas Wu appeared in the doorway, looking uncomfortable. "Natalie, there is someone here to see you. Says it is important." Before she could ask who, Christopher Sterling walked into the room, looking exactly as she remembered. Perfectly groomed, expensively dressed, radiating the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. Her breath caught in her throat, and for a moment she was transported back to Sterling Manor, to the humiliation and heartbreak. Christopher's eyes swept the modest community center with barely concealed disdain before settling on her. "Natalie, you look different." The observation sounded more like criticism than compliment. She straightened her shoulders, channeling the strength she had built over the past 9 months. "Christopher, what are you doing here?" "How did you even find me?" He moved closer, and she noticed the dark circles under his eyes, the tension in his jaw. "It was not easy. You disappeared completely. No social media, no forwarding address. I had to hire someone to track you down. We need to talk." "About what, exactly?" "I think you said everything that needed saying at our wedding." Her voice was steady, betraying none of the turmoil churning inside her. Christopher had the grace to look ashamed. "I made a terrible mistake, Natalie. The worst mistake of my life. I have spent every day of the past 9 months regretting what I did to you. I was a coward and a fool. I let my mother and her obsession with family legacy poison my thinking. I convinced myself you were not sophisticated enough, not connected enough. But I was wrong. You were perfect. You are perfect. Natalie felt a headache forming behind her eyes. This conversation, one she had imagined 1,000 times in the early days after leaving, was actually happening, and she felt nothing like she had expected. There was no triumph, no vindication, just exhaustion. Christopher, I appreciate the apology, but I have moved on. I have built a life here. I am happy. You should go back to your world and let me keep mine. His expression hardened with determination. I am not giving up that easily. I know I hurt you terribly, but I am not the same man I was 9 months ago. I ended things with Victoria's influence over my decisions. I have been in therapy, working on myself. I want another chance, Natalie. I want to prove I can be the man you deserved all along. He pulled out a small velvet box from his pocket. This is your grandmother's ring, the one you loved. I kept it. I could not bear to return it because some part of me always hoped you would wear it again. Before Natalie could respond, Benjamin appeared in the doorway. His expression was carefully neutral, but his eyes were sharp with assessment. Everything all right here, Natalie? She had never been more grateful to see anyone. Benjamin, this is Christopher Sterling. Christopher, this is Benjamin Hayes, my boyfriend. The word felt both strange and wonderful on her tongue. The choice Christopher's face went pale, then flushed with anger. Your boyfriend? You have been here less than a year, and you have already replaced me? The accusation in his voice sparked her own anger. Replaced you? Christopher, you rejected me publicly in the cruelest way possible. You destroyed what we had. I did not replace you. I healed from you. And then I found someone who actually values me for who I am, not who he wants to mold me into being. Benjamin stepped further into the room, his presence calm but protective. I think the lady has made her feelings clear. Perhaps it is time for you to leave. Christopher's eyes narrowed as he sized up Benjamin. Let me guess. Another wealthy businessman sweeping in to play hero? Natalie deserves better than being someone's project or charity case. Actually, Benjamin said evenly, Natalie is not anyone's project. She is a remarkable woman who has built a meaningful life here through her own strength and determination. I am simply fortunate enough that she allows me to be part of that life. And yes, I am successful in business, but unlike some people, I understand that success means nothing if you treat the people you love as accessories rather than partners. Natalie felt a surge of affection for Benjamin, but she also knew this was her confrontation to handle. Christopher, I want you to understand something. When you rejected me at our wedding, I thought my life was ending. I thought I would never recover from that humiliation and heartbreak. But you actually did me the biggest favor of my life. You freed me from a relationship where I was constantly shrinking myself to fit your expectations. You pushed me toward discovering who I really am and what I actually want. She gestured around the community center, at the art projects covering the walls, the evidence of young lives being touched and improved. This is what matters to me. These kids, this community, making a real difference in people's lives. Not fancy galas or impressing business associates or living up to some family legacy. Benjamin understands that. He supports it. He has been planning a resort project that will create jobs here while preserving what makes this town special. That is the kind of success that means something to me now. Christopher looked between Natalie and Benjamin, and something in his expression finally crumbled. You really have moved on. This is not just about punishing me or making me jealous. You actually love him. Natalie felt tears prick her eyes, but they were tears of clarity rather than pain. I do love him, but more importantly, I love myself now in a way I never did when we were together. I am sorry you are hurting, Christopher. I truly am. But I cannot fix your regrets by sacrificing my happiness. He stood there for a long moment, the velvet box still in his hand, before slowly putting it back in his pocket. I hope he deserves you, Natalie. I hope he never makes you feel the way I did. With that, Christopher Sterling walked out of the community center and out of her life for good. Natalie watched him go, feeling a chapter finally, definitively closing, the grand gesture that evening. Benjamin took Natalie to the beach where they had shared their first honest conversation about feelings. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that reflected off the water. I know today was difficult, he began, taking both her hands in his. Seeing him again, hearing him apologize and ask for another chance. I want you to know that if you need time to process everything, I understand. I am not going anywhere." Natalie smiled, reaching up to touch his face. "Benjamin, when Christopher showed up today, I thought I might feel something. Lingering love or vindication or even just satisfaction at seeing him regret his choices. But all I felt was grateful. Grateful that he rejected me because it led me here. To this town, to meaningful work, to you. You have shown me what real partnership looks like, what it means to be loved for exactly who I am." Benjamin pulled her close, his voice thick with emotion. "I love you, Natalie Foster. Not the version of you that fits some predetermined mold, but the woman who serves coffee with genuine kindness, who inspires teenagers to believe in themselves, who rebuilt her entire life from scratch with courage and grace. You are extraordinary exactly as you are." "I love you too," she whispered against his chest. "So much it scares me sometimes. But it is a good kind of scary, the kind that comes from knowing something really matters." They stood together as the sun disappeared below the horizon, the waves providing a gentle soundtrack to their moment. 6 months later, the grand opening of Hayes Harbor Resort was everything Benjamin had promised. The design incorporated local materials and aesthetics, creating a luxury space that felt authentically connected to Harborview. 20% of the profits were designated for the community center, ensuring sustainable funding for youth programs. Local businesses had been given priority for supply contracts, and many residents had found employment with fair wages and benefits. But the event Natalie cared about most was happening in the resort's intimate chapel overlooking the ocean. She stood in a simple cream dress, her hair loose and natural, holding a bouquet of wildflowers that Jasmine and the community center kids had gathered that morning. Patricia stood beside her as matron of honor, dabbing at happy tears. Benjamin waited at the altar, his daughter Olivia beaming beside him as maid of honor. This wedding was nothing like the elaborate spectacle at Sterling Manor. There were only 50 guests, all people who genuinely loved and supported them. Thomas Wu, the kids from the community center, Benjamin's family, Natalie's parents looking proud and relieved, and various Harborview residents who had become family over the past year and a half. When the officiant asked if they took each other as partners in life, both Natalie and Benjamin answered with unwavering certainty. They had written their own vows, promising not perfection but honesty, not grand gestures but daily kindness, not to change each other but to support each other's growth. As they exchanged simple gold bands, Natalie felt a peace she had never experienced before. This was not a fairy tale ending. It was something better. It was a real beginning, built on friendship, respect, and genuine love. The reception was held on the beach, with string lights and a local band playing. Natalie danced with Benjamin under the stars, surrounded by people who celebrated their love authentically. Jasmine approached during a break in the music, looking uncharacteristically emotional. "Thank you for showing me that you can start over. That one bad thing does not have to define your whole life." Natalie hugged the teenager tightly. "Thank you for reminding me why it was worth starting over." As the evening continued, Natalie thought about the journey that had brought her here. From the devastating rejection at Sterling Manor to this moment of pure joy in Harborview, she had learned that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you is actually life redirecting you toward where you were always meant to be. Christopher Sterling had rejected her at their wedding, believing she was not enough for his world. But fate had indeed prepared a plot twist. It had led her to a place where she was more than enough, where her value was recognized and celebrated, where love meant partnership rather than performance. As Benjamin twirled her under the stars, both of them laughing with pure happiness, Natalie knew with absolute certainty that she had found exactly where she belonged. Not in spite of her heartbreak, but because of it. Sometimes love has to break you open before you can discover what you truly deserve.